X here with my next review in the Mario Party franchise. In today's episode, we're looking at Mario Party Advance, which was technically the first portable entry of Mario Party. There was this obscure game called Mario Party E for the Game Boy Advance, but it required the Game Boy Advance's failure of an accessory called the e-reader, where we attached this device called the e-reader to our Game Boy Advance cartridge slot. We had to slide these exclusive cards into the e-reader to scan them, to convert their data into playable classic NES games like Donkey Kong Jr., along with like exclusive Pokemon cards that can unlock these mini games, and even extra levels and items for certain games like Super Mario Advance 4, feeling kind of like a primitive version of what we call today DLC, downloadable content. The e-reader was arguably the worst Game Boy Advance accessory ever made. It was just an overpriced and inconvenient waste of money. I remembered having one and it was terrible. It was annoying to have to constantly scan multiple cards in a specific order every time just to play a game like Donkey Kong Jr. So, luckily Virtual Console on the Wii gave us an easier and cheaper way to play these classic games, although that's kind of dead now, but we do have Nintendo Switch Online nowadays. Mario Party E is one game I will not be able to review, for it's a game that requires physical assets like the e-reader itself, a board map, and a card pack. It wasn't much of a game anyways from what I heard. It was more of just like some kind of card game, board game that had some playable mini games that required the Game Boy Advance, but yeah, it doesn't sound like it's worth the effort of buying or tracking down. So let's skip the most unheard of Mario Party game, and let's move on to the other Game Boy Advance one, which many have dubbed one of the worst Mario Party games ever made, Mario Party Advance. Released in 2005, the exact same year as the GameCube's last entry, Mario Party 7. This is the most divisive entry in the series, for it barely resembles any of the past games. It is focused on a single-player experience, though it does have some multiplayer functionality, but many of these modes were limited where they required another player to have their own Game Boy Advance and their own copy of the game, along with a link cable. So, yeah, not the most convenient way of playing multiplayer. So, the beloved adventure board maps from the past 7 games are gone, and we're left with nothing but a single-player mission mode, mini-games, challenge modes, and small useless unlockables called gadgets that do absolutely nothing valuable. If I could compare this to any other game that's been made, I guess the best I could come up with is, does anyone remember both Beauty and the Beast or the Winnie the Pooh game that was made for Game Boy Color? It's almost the exact same thing, where it's a game that plays like a board map. It's a single-player board game, but then it has like these little mini-games you gotta play in between. That's what it kind of reminds me of. I could have sworn I heard this game was added to Nintendo Switch Online's Game Boy Advance catalog, but I couldn't find it on there. Maybe I got it mistaken for the Wii U, had it on Virtual Console, but that's no longer available since the Wii U online servers have been shut down. So this will probably be my shortest review in the Mario Party series, because I'm not going to bother going in-depth over an hour of time on a game that's really not worth going in-depth over. I'll go over all of the mini-games, but I'm not going to go over all the single-player missions or gizmos. There's like 50 missions you gotta do all together. It's just repetitive and mind-numbing. This game has the smallest roster in the series, with only Mario, Luigi, Peach, and Yoshi as playable characters. That's 2 characters less than both Mario Party 1, and even less characters than the awful e-reader game. The composer for Mario Party 3 and 4 returns, as they remade a bunch of the music from those games into chiptune form, so at least the soundtrack is decent. Honestly, one of the best original tracks made for this game is in the gadget mode. As useless as the gadgets were, I do like the music in that menu. So the game's visuals aren't bad. There's still a bunch of fun characters based on Mario baddies throughout the game. I mean, I think this is the first time you saw a lot of these characters in a sprite form, like the Womps from Mario 64. This is the first time I recall ever seeing them in sprite form. So yeah, it's really cool to see all these enemies that you're so familiar with. I remember this game was a good introduction for a lot of these characters, because back then I didn't know who their names were, but because they're so heavily focused in the story mode here, it got me to learn and recognize their names. So like, who would have guessed that the shark creatures that were shown in like Mario 64 or Mario Party 2, who would have guessed that their name was Sushi? So Tumble from Mario Party 3 even returns as the host for story mode. So the story involves a place called Party World, and it's under attack by Bowser and his Koopa kids as they steal all 50 of Professor Egad's gadgets and scatter them across a town called Mushroom City. It's up to our heroes to get them back as they roll dice blocks to drive around in a car, stop by places to solve mysteries, do fetch quests, play minigames, and recollect all the missing gadgets in order to take Bowser down. The game feels very similar to a point-and-click adventure game, minus the point-and-clicking, and with a bunch of board game gimmicks and minigames thrown in. The gameplay is very repetitive, and it gets worse the further we progress. You start off with only 5 lives in the form of mushrooms, and you lose a mushroom every time you roll a dice. And if we run out of dice, we lose and we have to start all over. We still get to save the progress for all the missions that we've completed. But if we're in the middle of a mission and we didn't get it complete, that means that we got to do it all over. And that's real annoying because a lot of these missions require going from one place and going through a bunch of unskippable cutscenes. Sometimes there might be multiple choice answers that are required to continue forward. Once we get the mission started, we then got to go to another place on the other side of the map, and that can take a number of turns to get there, and there's a lot of interruptions that can get in the way. And so, yeah, it's real annoying if you lose a mission after all that time, then you're forced to start all over. So it's not a very fun single-player experience. There are 3 character-specific missions, one that requires either Luigi or Mario, one that requires Peach, and one that requires Yoshi. The problem is that there is no option to swap these characters without starting a new game. Luckily, starting a new game will keep records of the missions we've completed and all the boss fights we've completed, all the gizmos we've collected and all that, but it resets your mushroom count and your location upon restarting, so you still gotta do a lot of grinding to get enough mushrooms so you can make it there on time. Yeah, it's best to only start a new game to swap characters after you've collected all that you can with just one character, and then when you're down to just those character-specific missions, that's when I would suggest starting a new game. Some of these missions are very easy, but others are brutal and not fun at all. Some missions require you going through lengthy dialogue and fetch quests, followed by a minigame. And if you mess up the minigame, like I said earlier, the characters suddenly get amnesia, and you gotta start the whole quest over without being able to skip these cutscenes and dialogue. There's once again a lot of dumb luck events in this game, including awful gambling casino games that don't belong in a family game. Some of the character dialogue is pretty humorous, but once you've beaten this story mode, there's nothing left to do. It won't give you any reason to want to come back and start all over. It's just boring. I don't see anyone in their right mind wanting to go through all this torture again. Some of the most annoying ones are the mystery-themed ones. The mysteries feel less like they take educated guesses and more like dumb random guesses. And if you fail to pick the wrong suspect or deduction, you're forced to restart the whole event, rewatching the cutscenes and dialogue that came before. It's real annoying. There's a lot of this in this game. Some of the mysteries are funny though, like a sushi getting worried because someone fell off a cliff and landed in the water. Now let that sink in. A shark being worried because someone fell into shark-infested waters. I can't help but give a chuckle over that. The games get worse the closer you get to the finish. For Koopa Kid starts spawning every 2 turns to either challenge you to rock, paper, scissors, where he'll steal a mushroom from you if you lose, or he'll summon Bowser to warp us back like 100 spaces, which is real frustrating when you're trying to get the last 2 objectives done, only for Bowser to keep sending us away, and there's no way to avoid this. It really takes dumb luck. After a certain number of gadgets are reclaimed, a warp pipe in front of Bowser's castle will open up, which leads to a challenge and boss minigame against the Koopa Kids. There's 8 of these warp pipes altogether, and we need to complete all of them in order to get to the final boss, along with needing to collect all 49 gadgets before getting to the final boss as well. And then what's our reward for getting them all back and beating Bowser? All we get is the final gadget, which isn't even a gadget, it's just an autograph of Bowser's footprint. What the heck? Since when are pieces of paper gadgets? Speaking of gadgets, they're some of the most useless unlockables I've ever seen. They're trying to act like there's so much fun to be had with these, and there's like 50 to collect, but they're just mindless apps that no one will want to spend more than 5 seconds on. Most of these equal the equivalent of watching paint dry. There's a challenge mode where we can play a tournament of the game's mini-games, but on even harder difficulties, as we're challenged to keep playing and double or nothing our coin prizes. We can spend those coins on exclusive gadgets that are not worth the hassle to unlock. The hardest to unlock gadget is just an animated sprite of the superstars from the past games. It's like it's taunting players over the thing that's missing from this game's gameplay. There are no stars or coins to collect in the story mode or mini-games. The coins are exclusive to the gambling challenge modes. On to the mini-games in Playland. Despite how most of the mini-games are single player, with only a few 2-player options, the mini-games in this are overall decent, but some are very frustrating to play outside of story mode. Story mode uses shorter and easier versions of these minigames, but in minigame replay mode, they are even longer and harder to beat than before. It's cool how most of these games save our best records though. Starting off with the regular 4-player minigames, there's 30 of these altogether. Bye-Bye is a survival challenge where we have to evade the boos and lure them into the paintings that match their color. Grab It has us trying to catch the most rabbits by chasing and diving to grab them before they hop back into their holes. Careful not to crash into any walls or you'll get dizzy. It can be tricky, but it still beats chasing the rabbits from Mario 64. Chomp Walker is a fun idea, but incredibly challenging. We're tasked to try walking a chain chomp as far as we can, while making sure to dodge his attempts to charge at us, along with having him avoid eating bones, which will just slow him down. We want to lure him to try eating some meat, though. It will supercharge him to move a lot faster. Cloud Climber is a time trial minigame to see how fast we can bounce off of these clouds and springs to reach a goal, while avoiding amps. Barrel Peril is basically Sneak and Snore from Mario Party 2 done right. Sneak and Snore was an annoying dumb luck minigame with overpowered CPU. Barrel Peril has similar gameplay as we race to the finish while hiding in barrels before Chain Chomp can ram us. Unlike Mario Party 2, where getting caught eliminates us, along with having very delayed animations every time we try hiding. This game lets us hide in the barrels quickly by holding the A button and letting go to pop back out. Even if we're already caught, we can still protect ourselves by diving into the barrel. There's no delayed animation for that, so yeah, that's really cool. I like this minigame a lot better than that awful Mario Party 2 minigame. Big Popper is a fun one where we try fanning bubbles into spikes while trying to make sure that none of the bubbles touch the ground. Our score multiplies if we pop many bubbles in a row quickly. Forest Jump is a tricky one where strong gusts of wind change directions that try blowing us away as we try jumping over or ducking under logs that come flying at us. Switchway is a rather annoying one where we have to either jump from underneath a platform or ground pound on top of it to make it move horizontally or vertically in order to reach a goal. This one isn't so hard on solo mode, it's just long and boring if anything, but I honestly gave up on playing it in the play mode. The course is bigger and longer and I got stuck and lost and yeah, I just lost interest. I didn't care about making it to the goal, I got bored. Amplified is a survival challenge where we try seeing how long we can last without getting zapped by the amps. It would have been better if it wasn't a Game Boy Advance minigame. I never liked moving characters in 3D spaces with only a D-pad. I prefer using a joystick. Fling Shot is a tiring one where we can alternate between the A and B buttons to fire ourselves out of a giant slingshot as we tilt up or down to try flying into these horizontal whirlwinds in order to boost us further. The vertical whirlwinds will give us an extra height boost, but they slow us down in the process, so it's best to avoid the vertical whirlwinds. Spooky Spike has us diving in 4 directions with the D-pad to try bouncing back the Boo's volleyball spikes. Ba-Boom is a tricky one where we have to time things right to drop bob-bombs in order to blow up these Bowser statues below us. The bottom ones are the toughest ones to get right. Real Cheap is real easy, as we move our fishing rod towards the fish shadows. Once a fish bites, we input random L and R button prompts to reel in the fish. Our goal is to earn the most points from the heaviest fish. Shell Stack has us jumping on Koopa shells fired out of cannons, as we try making the tallest tower out of Koopa shells without getting hit. Bill Bounce is a fun one where we try racking up combos by hopping off of 3 rows of bullet bills. Bunny Belt has us pressing D-pad and button inputs to create the most stuffed bunnies. Pesticide feels like a Game & Watch game, as we have to use the D-pad to protect 4 sunflowers by pressing A to water them and pressing B when they're infested with insects so we can spray them away with pesticides. Melon Folly is a hop puzzle where we need to hop across these rafts to collect watermelons, save the melon for last. The raft sinks as soon as we jump on them, so it doesn't give us much of a chance to jump back, nor does it give us much time to strategize on the paths we should take ahead of time, for there's a time limit. Sort Stack has us use the A and B buttons to hold up to 2 books as we try putting books back on their respective shelves with their matching colors. It's a decent time challenge, but it would have worked better with the L and R buttons in my opinion. On the Spot is a memory game where a Womp shows us parts of his back that he wants rubbed as we mimic the pattern shown with the D-pad. This would have worked better as a minigame on Mario Party DS with touchscreen controls. Koopa Crunch is a simple match 3 or more colored puzzle block game. There's these pesky Koopa shells that can only be cleared out with a red shell, but the red shell barely ever spawns. It's not the best puzzle game in the series, but it's not the worst either. This is probably the minigame I played the most back then. We lose if our screen gets filled with blocks and shells. Floor is a fun elevator minigame where we open the left and right doors of an elevator as we use the D-pad right up and down in order to pick up guests and drop them off on their designated floors. It can be overwhelming as we get sidetracked by more coming, as we scramble over who would be the quickest and easiest character to deliver first in order to get the best high score. Dreadmill's an okay challenge where we run across 2 lanes of direction-changing conveyor belts as we race to the goal while avoiding being slowed down by spike traps. Stompbot XL is the most misleading minigame title. It gives the impression that we have to use a stomping robot to stomp on something. Instead, we're just driving a tank-like vehicle inside of a volcano as we try staying ahead to dodge this lava. It only gives us 3 HP, which feels so pointless, since bumping into rocks, walls, and lava pools will drastically slow us down, not giving us much of a chance to pick up more speed and evade the lava. Pogo a Go-Go is my least favorite minigame here. It's just way too tricky. We need to pogo to the goal under a time limit while watching out for rising piranha plants or fireballs. Trying to time the A button right to get a super bounce is just very tricky, and the obstacles can be very hard and unpredictable at times, so not a fan of it. Sled Slide is a top-down sled race as we have to hold the A button to accelerate and press the B button to pull on the brakes while making turns, or our sled will spin out of control and it'll slow us down. Flippin' Out has us holding the D-pad in different directions as we press the A button to swing and jump off of many pegs in order to reach a goal. It's simple, but fun. I prefer swinging gameplay like this compared to ones that require perfect timing or momentum, or actually having to swing like the control stick back and forth in order to get momentum, you know. So yeah, I kind of prefer swinging gameplay like this in comparison. Sea Monkey is a top-down boat race that requires us to collect all the ukikis that are trapped in the water. Turning can be tricky, and trying to get all the ukikis without missing one is quite challenging, but it's okay. Out of My Way is another one of my least favorite minigames. It's just so bloated and boring. I gave up on it after getting stuck. This one requires us to platform through a maze as we push thwomps, lure womps to fall over so we can jump on them, along with punching down pokies in order to find the goal. This minigame is just slow and boring. It was easy in story mode, but it's confusing in play mode. I couldn't find the exit this time, and I just quit not caring. Broom Zoom has us flying on a witch's broom as we try to fly through as many rings as we can while dodging amps. Now on to the 8 duel minigames. Admittedly, the 30 standard minigames were overall decent, but the duel games are pretty insufferable. Tank Down has us fighting with tanks in the dark, with barely any light source, as we try firing these giant boxing gloves at our opponents. Players have 4 HP each, and half their HP can be taken down with a charge blast by holding and releasing the A button, but charge blasts really slow down the player's mobility. Hammergeddon is a battle to hit our opponents with hammers 3 times. This wouldn't be so bad if the CPU didn't have the need to corner us into a wall each time. It's such a cheap and stupid move. They won't be able to hit us from that close, but it makes it near impossible for us to get around them so we can get far away enough from them to actually have our hammers hit them. Yeah, I don't like this one. Climb Stairs is a button masher as we race to escape from a collapsing set of stairs. Chicken is an unfun game of chicken, where the last one to run out before a thwomp crushes us is the winner. Chainsaw has us alternating between the L and R buttons to saw a chain off of a thwomp in order to have it crush our opponents before they crush us. We can't go too fast or our characters will grow tired and slow down. So it's best to slow your button input a little bit when you start seeing 3 beads of sweat coming off of your character's head. Volley Bomb has us whacking a bob-omb back and forth over a net with a hammer. If the volleying goes on too long, the bob-omb will blow up over time. The first to get bombed or fail to volley the ball 3 times loses. Koopa Curl is just 2 rounds of curling, but with Koopa shells. This minigame would have worked so much better if it weren't for the Game Boy Advance's limited screen space. If it actually gave us like a vertical view and was able to fit it all in one screen. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it really works for a sprite-themed gameplay. It would have worked better in a 3D game. Along with, it should have given us better visuals to demonstrate where the angles can bounce off for our shells, or how far the gauge will send our shells. There's better games of shuffleboard or curling out there. And Slammer is a quick time game where roulette will show one of two characters' faces. If that player's face shows up, they need to press the A button to try flattening the opponent with a giant hammer, while the opponent needs to press the B button fast enough to try bouncing back the attack. The player gets penalized if they press A or B on the wrong turn. This really should have been a case where whoever gets hit first loses, because each player is given 5 HP, so this minigame drags on longer than it needs to. On to the 6 Koopa Kid boss minigames. Mush Rush has us trying to defend 3 mushrooms from Koopa Kids, as we use the B and A buttons to swing hammers in different directions to try smacking away the Koopas. Crushed Ice has us moving a spiked sled to try ramming the Koopa Kids out of the arena. Peek and Sneak is a stealth-based event where we try sneaking past the Koopa Kids without being spotted. Splatterball is an arcade shooter where we shoot down the Koopa Kids, but we can only shoot 5 paintballs at a time, and we need to reload with the R button on occasion. Trap Floor is a juggling act of opening red and blue trapdoors with the A and B buttons in order to drop Koopa Kids out of the game, while trying to prevent them from reaching the player. And Koopa Kappa has us trying to trap Koopa Kids with toy capsules by pressing matching buttons. There's also 6 gambling minigames, but I'm not going to bother going over each of them. They're all just boring and annoying, including things like slots, wheels, match'ems, coin drops, and other dumb luck crap. Overall, most of these 50 minigames are decent, with the only ones that are really worth playing being most of the 30 single-player minigames, and the Koopa Kid boss games aren't too bad, but the rest are boring and annoying garbage. And that was Mario Party Advance. It's arguably one of the worst Mario Party games, but is it a bad game? While the single-player mode is overall a boring, repetitive, and frustrating mess with too many minigames, terrible setbacks with its restrictions and strict rules and all that, there still is fun to be had here though. The gadgets really aren't worth the hassle of unlocking, but there is some fun to be had with a good chunk of the 50 minigames. There were more minigames in this than I remember. I could have sworn this game only had like 12 minigames, but the duel games and casino games are very forgettable and not worth replaying, but some of these 4-player minigames and Koopa Kid minigames, they are actually pretty fun for a Game Boy Advance game. So I can't quite call this a bad game, but I can't call it a good Mario Party game. I'll spare giving it the lowest D ranking, but I'll put it right behind Mario 7 on the bottom of the C list. Maybe someday Nintendo will add this game to the Nintendo Switch Online service so many other gamers can finally check this out and form their own opinions on whether it's the worst Mario Party game or an underrated gem. For me, it's an okay game, it just wasn't what I was hoping for with the first handheld Mario Party entry. But luckily, fans got a much better and proper handheld entry with the next handheld attempt, Mario Party DS, the first 3D handheld Mario Party entry, along with being the first one to use touchscreen controls. So I plan on covering the Wii U Virtual Console port of that game next time, but I might take a short break because as of the time that I am writing the script for this video, it is Christmas Eve, and in case I get any new video games for Christmas, I'll probably be spending some time trying those games out. So yeah, it might be a while before I resume this Mario Party review series, but either way, thank you all for watching and have a great day.